Is this the year for Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens? Our guest, Kevin Ostreicher, breaking down everything going on with the Ravens camp report, and a look at the AFC North on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson, as always, at BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Love our everydayers. And if you're new to the program, welcome. Please subscribe on YouTube or wherever you are listening to this podcast. And make sure you are also subscribed up to Locked On Ravens. Kevin Ostreicher at KOstreicher34 joining us today. Break down Ravens camp. I want to get an all-encompassing look before we get too specific. I know, like a lot of teams, dealing with some nicks and some injuries as you start training camp and get ready for those preseason games and find out how serious some of those things might be. But just as an overall offseason, what did the Baltimore Ravens need to do this offseason to get over whatever hump it is they need to get over? I'd actually like to hear what you think that hump is. And did they accomplish that goal going into 2025, Kevin?
Yeah, I think that in order to get over the hump, they're just going to have to win in the playoffs. I mean, it really is just as simple as that. I don't think that, their roster got better this offseason, but they've had rosters in the past that could have won Super Bowls over the last handful of years. I just think for me, it's Lamar Jackson, it's the coaching staff, it's just the whole team. I'm not going to pin it on one person. Just in those big moments, the team has shrunk, and that's their identity. That is what the league thinks of them, and they, unfortunately, for the Ravens, have earned that. It is now their job to play well enough in the postseason consistently. They've had impressive wins in years past with Lamar Jackson, but, they haven't even made a Super Bowl. And they've had, in my opinion, 3 pretty historic seasons in 2019, 2023, and 2024. And so not having a Super Bowl, at least appearance to show for that, is pretty disappointing. Heading into the offseason, it really was just about upgrading on the margins, in my opinion. They didn't really lose a ton this offseason. Patrick McCarry went to Jacksonville. Brandon Stevens went to the Jets. But over the last couple of years prior, they had a couple of big free agent loss off seasons where last year it was guys like Patrick Queen, Geno Stone, those guys leaving for AFC North rivals. A couple of years ago, they lost a couple other players as well that were key contributors. But this offseason, they really could focus on retaining a lot of their talent, which they did. They extended players like Derrick Henry, Rashad Bateman. They brought in a DeAndre Hopkins to replace Nelson Aguilar as the number 3 receiver. And then I guess Jair Alexander just kind of fell right into their lap late in the offseason, who gives them a really nice duo with Nate Wiggins on the outside with Marlon Humphrey expected to play in the slot this year. So they had a good draft as well. Malaki Starks and Mike Green were their top 2 picks, who I know a lot of people had in their top 15, top 20, both of those guys. So I'd call it pretty successful for the Ravens. But again, they can line up in the regular season and go 17-0. I don't think a lot of people are going to believe in them until they win a playoff game consistently and get to the Super Bowl at this point, which is their own doing.
So, Kevin, as our listeners know, I'm recording this from a dorm room at Steeler training camp, of course. And then obviously these guys are heated rivals. And I'll be the first to admit the Ravens have been a much better football team, at least a tier or 2 better than the Steelers over the last 5 years during the Lamar era, however you want to, since Big Ben, however you want to dub it. But I sense a similar frustration, albeit at a higher level. Steelers every year go to the playoffs. They get blown out in round 1, where the Ravens take it a step further. But these fan bases have some similarities, and I get a lot of negativity, wow, they're just going to do it again. They're going to win 9 or 10 games, go to the first round, get blown out. Are Ravens fans more optimistic? This is our year, or is it, man, I don't think they can ever get past Mahomes or blah, blah, blah,
Yeah, I think
they're spoiled fan bases, I guess, is one way
right.
to put it.
Exactly. Yeah, that's honestly 100%. Yeah, I mean,
right.
When you have those high standards, and obviously Pittsburgh has their championships, the Ravens have won 2 in their franchise history.
Yeah.
Like, there is that championship standard, and for as consistent as it is, regular season success, I think a lot of teams would do a lot of things to have the regular season consistent success that the Ravens and Steelers have had over the course, because it's not always like that.
Sure.
But of course, you don't judge based off of regular season success when it comes to that next step. Obviously, you're talking Lombardis, you're talking rings. And so there is that level of frustration, especially with the past. But I think that a lot of Ravens fans, they are trying to turn the page into 2024 because of the roster that they have this season. I think a lot of people, the consensus right now is that it is the best roster that the team has had in the Lamar Jackson era. And this is truly only the second year of them being like these heavy favorites in a way. I guess 2020 was one of those years as well, coming off of 2019. But I'm talking about with the stacked rosters they've had. In 2019, no one expected them to go 14-2. That was Lamar's first full season as a starter. Everybody was kind of wondering, okay, what can Lamar do to build off his rookie season? Then he just kind of burst onto the scene and, threw 36 touchdowns and won the MVP. 2023, when they had that other historic season, that was coming off of 2 season-ending Lamar Jackson injuries, and everybody was wondering if he could just stay healthy for a full season. He obviously won the MVP that year as well. 2024 was really that, like, okay, Lamar's an MVP again. They have a great roster. Expectations, the target's on you. And I think that, again, is what they have this season. But I think it's going to come down for the Ravens. It is Super Bowl or bust, and I think I mean that in the most sincere way this year, particularly when it comes to John Harbaugh. I think for John Harbaugh, and, you can maybe draw even more similarities between the Ravens and the Steelers, Matt.
That's what I say, the longest tenured coaches. Right. I've seen this. I've been there, right.
Yeah, exactly. And so, you mentioned how, the Steelers, it's more so the Ravens take it like 1 or 2 steps further, and then, it ends up being the same result. But the Ravens have essentially removed all the shielding from John Harbaugh, in my opinion. They did the new offensive coordinator thing. Mike McDonald moved on to Seattle. Zach Orr's in his second season. I mean, they've shifted around personnel. Lamar Jackson's not going anywhere. So if they have another disappointing exit in the wild card round or the divisional round, which, again, to me, for the standard this team is at right now, is unacceptable, are you going to fire the special teams coach? Like, I don't know what the next move is before you get to John Harbaugh. And that's not me saying Harbaugh's a bad coach. I think that,
of course not,
25 teams will be lining up out the door to get John Harbaugh in their building. But sometimes it's just time. And they signed him to an extension this offseason. I don't think that really means anything. I mean, the Ravens can go ahead and just say, hey, we don't want you here anymore. Let's move on. But Harbaugh has transformed himself. I still think the players love him. They want to play for him. But at some point, if it doesn't keep going your way and you keep having these disappointing exits in the way they're having them, you kind of just maybe have to look yourself in the mirror and say it might be time to make the big change.
That's why I made the comparison, because I get that a lot around here. Right?
Well, Justin Tucker's gone, so that's going to open up the door to a couple killer missed field goals, and then it's going to be the special team scapegoat. So I think one more built in for another season if he needs it. It sounds like you're kind of painting a picture of a head coach that needs to win that Super Bowl more than the quarterback. I think the national storyline, and if you ask fans, like, why aren't the Ravens winning Super Bowl? Oh, Lamar can't do it in the playoffs. Is there any truth to that?
I mean, based off of the results of him not having a Super Bowl, there is. But I also don't pin it all on Lamar. Like, obviously, he has a role to play in it. He has not stepped up in the moments they have needed him to at times. Like, all of that is correct. But I think that the national media and just the media in general, the media pressure is on Lamar Jackson. I think the real pressure is on John Harbaugh. We look at quarterbacks like Peyton Manning, who won his first championship when he was 30 years old. Drew Brees, I believe, was 30 or 31, maybe 32, right around that age. Lamar still has time to do it. And so, yes, with the teams that he's had and the moments that he's faltered in, I mean, you can go back to the Buffalo game last season. He was a key part in why they got down in that game and why they had to fight and claw and come back. But he was, I think, one of the only reasons why, outside of the defense, who ended up turning it on late, I mean, he was a big part in why they were even in that game at the end. He drove down the field with literally Anthony Miller. Rashad Bateman and Zay Flowers were both out. They had no one. It was Anthony Miller and friends. They ended up tying the game, and then we all know what happened. Mark Andrews drops a 2-point conversion. So, Lamar has his role and his faults in this, and I'm not going to shy away from that. It's true. But to me, I think that it's a bigger picture than that. Even in 2023, when the Ravens ran the ball just 6 times with the running back after being one of the best historically running teams in NFL history, that was something that I think the coaching staff, they got psyched out on. It happened in 2019. Lamar had over 500 total yards in that Tennessee game. But, I think it's just this day and age, and it really has been that way for a while, where the quarterback's the most important position on the roster. The quarterback is going to get the majority of the blame from a player perspective when you don't win in those big moments. So he doesn't have Josh Allen's stats in the playoffs, right? Josh Allen has been a better playoff performer in terms of statistics, but the two have not made the Super Bowl. That's a fact. Joe Burrow has made the Super Bowl. He's not won it. So it's all in the conversations of like Mahomes is still that quarterback from a accolade perspective, a championship perspective. You have to beat, and all three of those guys are chasing him right now.
More on Lamar Jackson's pass catchers in 2025, D-Hop in town, and more with Kevin Ostreicher of Locked On Ravens next. This episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by Yahoo Fantasy. Fantasy football, it's back. Fire up the group chat. I know it's already getting fired up for my friends. I mean, I've got a league going on 20 years on Yahoo Fantasy, and you can go back and check all of the past winners and see how you did. We got all our keepers, know who we were in the draft last year. The draft is always so smooth. So draft board's getting ready. We're buckled up for season filled with breakouts, busts, and, of course, all the overreactions and trash talk that we live for. It's all going down on Yahoo Fantasy. And as I mentioned, been playing Yahoo Fantasy, of course, this year and every year, making my millionth league. So whether you're a first-timer or a veteran, it's time to celebrate 28 years of fantasy greatness with Yahoo Fantasy, dropping 28 big new features over the next 28 days, starting August 4th, giving you more ways to play, more ways to draft, and more ways to win. So stay tuned and get started by creating or joining a Yahoo Fantasy Football League at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. And you don't even have to know anybody. You can just go jump in a public league right now. That's yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. And let's make this fantasy season the best one yet.
The latest news, the biggest news right now coming out of Baltimore is the Isaiah Likely injury. And it looks like it's going to go reasonably well into the season. Now, I'm sure we have some listeners that are like, you guys don't talk about a backup tight end? Who cares? That's not the case to me. I mean, to me, this is an ascending player about to hit his peak years, getting better and better. They were the highest 12 personnel team in the league, give or take. He's a reliant, him and Andrews present matchup problems all over the field. And I think it's a substantial loss, especially when you look at how hard the Ravens schedule is opening the season. Are they going to go to more 11? I mean, is Hopkins and Bateman going to be out there a lot more? Is it going to be more Ricard? Is it going to be, hey, Charlie Kohler, try to be, Likely? How do you get over that?
Yeah, it is a loss, no doubt. And luckily, we're recording this episode late in July, right at the end of the month. So there is still time for maybe Isaiah Likely to sneak back before the season starts. Sure. I wouldn't rush him, though. I mean, the initial timeline that's being reported, he fractured his foot in camp on Tuesday. It's about 6 to 8 weeks. So on the shorter end of that timeline, you have him literally like 2 days after week 1. So it's possible that he could get back for that game, but it's also possible maybe he gets back in week 3 instead against Detroit on that Monday night game. Regardless, though, I think that more 3 receiver sets are probably what we're going to see. I think they're going to have to fill in Charlie Kohler there. We might see more heavy personnel in terms of Ricard filling in line. But I think that a guy that I'm honestly intrigued by to see if he gets more playing time, because I think everybody is mentioning DeAndre Hopkins. That's the big veteran free agent addition they brought in at the wide receiver spot. Tez Walker, a second-year player from North Carolina, was a 4th-round pick for the Ravens last season, showed some flashes. He has been exceptional during training camp so far. He absolutely, I think he was the winner of spring practices at OTAs and minicamp. He brings a speed element. He's a bigger-bodied contested catch player as well. I think that he could be someone that slots in and fills in. And the Ravens have had, and I think every team has those training camp success stories. You're just like, man, this guy is the next coming of Jerry Rice. And then he just, by the time the regular season hits, you're like, okay, this guy's inactive every single week. What were we doing talking about this guy?
Right.
But I think that for the Ravens and what they have right now, the ball's going to have to go somewhere. I mean, those targets, Likely was going to get a decent target share in this offense. And I mean, when he comes back, he's still going to anyway. But those targets have to go somewhere. Does Lamar force feed Mark Andrews a little more? Does he force feed Zay Flowers a little more? I mean, probably some of those targets will go there. But I think that the best thing about the Ravens is that they really are 2 or 3 deep at almost every position on their roster. So losing a guy like Likely, it's like, all right, man, you just got to go to this like multi-time Pro Bowl or an All-Pro. Man, darn, that's unfortunate they have to do that. So I think that the Ravens are in a good spot. Obviously, it hurts their offense when Likely's not out there. I think his versatility, his athleticism, he's really improved as a run blocker. There's a lot he brings to the table. But I think the Ravens using more heavy wide receiver sets, you can use your card out there like you mentioned. I think they'll be able to survive it. But if he does miss 2 weeks, they cannot start 0-2 again like last season. That cannot happen.
The Flowers, he came up lame. Was it a practice, or we just held out? Was that precautionary, or is
it looks precautionary. Harbaugh called it a camp thing, so take that as you will. He said it's going to be probably a couple days and he'll be back out there. So it looks like they avoided something more serious with him.
So I can make a really strong case that this is the best roster in the league. I think it's the best secondary in the league. They have an elite quarterback. It's hard to find weaknesses. I guess if I had to nitpick, and it's not a bad place to be average or below, is at the guard position. Am I missing somewhere? Like, if you had to pick out the starters, who's the weakest area? Is it guard?
I'd probably agree. I'd say guard. I mean, if you really wanted to get into the details, the second inside linebacker spot next to Roquan Smith is one. But the Ravens don't really play a huge amount of base anyway. I don't expect them to this year. And so you don't need to have a second inside linebacker, especially with the amount of dime that they play. And, they're just unique in the way they deploy their personnel.
Their safety can do it all.
Yeah. You can fill in there with those guys anyway. So, I mean, that's another one. I mean, I guess they lost our Darius Washington to a torn Achilles, and he was a big contributor for them last season. So filling in that third safety spot, Bo Braid, who was undrafted out of Maryland, Sanusi Kane, a seventh rounder out of Purdue. Those two guys fill in there. But if you really want like the impact position, it is definitely going to be guard, where Daniel Falele had some tough moments, more than a few tough moments last season, contributed to a couple of losses for them. He apparently put in a ton of work this offseason. He is a lot more in shape. He worked with a bunch of different offensive line gurus, and so far the reports have been good on him. Andrew Voorhees, who the Ravens spent a 7th-round pick on a couple years ago after he had the injury at the Combine. He was going to be like a 3rd or 4th rounder out of USC. He ended up winning their guard spot last season at left guard, got injured, then never got it back from Patrick McCary. He wasn't bad. I just think the Ravens wanted to go with the more veteran option there. But, I mean, I agree. I think that it's Baltimore and Philly as the top 2 rosters in the NFL. I think you can make an argument for both of them, but I just think with the Jair Alexander addition, and you mentioned the secondary, I think that's what pushed it over the top for me, where it's like, again, if a guy goes down, and, this is football, it happens, the Ravens, I think, are well equipped to survive those injuries for as long as it happens because of the depth that they've accumulated.
Yeah, I look at the offensive line, and I think of, the age and the injury history of Ronnie Stanley, and then Roger Rosengarten. Are we out of the woods yet there? Because it was an up and down season. It's always tough for a rookie to jump in and play offensive tackle in the NFL, and they asked him to do that fairly early in the season. How do you look at the end of the season, and is that one where you're just like, okay, no, we're good now at right tackle with Rosengarten there?
I feel confident in Roger Rosengarten. I think with what he showed, especially towards the end of last season, it was rough for him early. He had moments against Kansas City and other earlier games where he clearly looked like a rookie out there, and that's to be expected. But I think as the year went on, we really saw him come into his own. He kind of locked down that starting spot, and I think with that came the confidence of like, okay, the team believes in me. I'm here. I'm contributing, and I think he carried that momentum. He had a viral moment with Myles Garrett later in the season that everybody's talking about, where he essentially asked for a jersey for Myles Garrett. He said, "Oh, I'm a nobody," or something along those lines. He's like, "No, man, like no," and really encouraged Roger Rosengarten. I think that moment, honestly, might have been a turning point for him. I think, second year, sophomore slumps, it happens, right? You're not, I don't think, completely out of the woods there, but I'm like 95% sure that the Ravens have found at least a solid starter. I'm not saying he's the second coming of, the top 5 offensive tackles that ever play the game, right? But I think that at least they have found a solid starter. That's what their goal was going in. There was that kind of run at the end of the second round on offensive linemen. The Ravens ended up going for Rosengarten. Stanley is he had a great year last year, was healthy. That's obviously the number 1 priority with Ronnie Bryan, like you mentioned. You just got to hope it stays that way. He, wasn't necessarily prime Ronnie Stanley last season, but he was about 80% of that, which I think is what all Ravens fans were hoping for. Mm-hmm. So you got to be able to stay healthy there. They've also struggled with pre-snap penalties, holding calls, and the whole 9 on the offensive line, and that has continued into training camp this year. So you hope that they can figure that out. I remember week 1 against Kansas City, every other play was a illegal formation on Ronnie Stanley for lining up too deep in the backfield, and then it was never to be heard from again by any team. So the Ravens have good guys on the offensive line. It's just a matter of can those guard spots, in my opinion, round it out.
So multiple human shields. You get special teams coordinator, throw the offensive line coach out there, give you a couple extra years if you're John Harbaugh.
Yeah.
Baltimore Ravens making big moves in the draft in the first couple of rounds on the defensive side of the ball. Malaki Starks and Mike Green camp reports. And how is this AFC North going to play out in 2025? Next. This episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. Time to fuel up and turn it up with 5-Hour Energy and the new Transfusion. It brings bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor to your favorite golf drink, minus the alcohol, into a quick, energizing shot. If you golf, you know that transfusions quickly become one of the most popular drinks on the golf course. And whether you're sinking birdies or making memories with friends, this one's a hole-in-one for your energy game. Keep you going on the back nine. Let's be honest, some days on the course or off it, you just need that extra boost to stay sharp and energized. And golf is about good times, good people, good flavors, and man, the grape, ginger, lime transfusion hits just right. If you go to 5hourenergy.com today, that is the number 5, hourenergy.com, you can use our promo code LOCKEDONGolf to receive 20% off your order. Get some transfusion or any flavor of your own. This offer is only valid September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Code is LOCKEDONGolf. Whether you're meeting up with friends, trying to turn 18 holes into 36, maybe you, like me, you enjoy walking the course now, maybe need a little extra pick-me-up if you're not in the cart all day like some of your buddies might be. Order transfusion-flavored 5-hour energy shots today.
Kevin, the Ravens' edge pass rush always interests me because we'll be the first to admit they don't have a Garrett, they don't have a Bosa. But it's always by committee, by scheme. It's always good. They do invest in there. There's first-round picks. There's second-round picks. There's certainly talent. Van Noy's just a very good all-around player. Could you see any of these guys, though, stepping up to the next level? And particularly Oweh, I would guess, is the one that's most likely.
Yep. Oweh is the guy that a lot of people have penciled in. He's in a contract year. We saw a couple of years ago with Nnamdi Madubuike. He entered a contract year, had 13 and a half, I believe it was, 13 sacks, and parlayed that into almost $100 million. So for Odafe Oweh, he's coming off his first double-digit sack season of his career. The thing with Oweh is consistency. I mean, you had that Steelers game last year. He had 3 sacks. He looked like he couldn't be stopped, and then he just kind of disappeared for a month and a half, and you're like, where's this Odafe Oweh we saw against the Steelers? And so he added about
0 sacks at Penn State. You know,
and that was the big thing. They picked him in the first round, and the statistical production was not there. It was purely an athleticism upside swing, and I think it's gone well for him. I mean, he's not the best pass rusher in the league. He's not the Garretts or the Watts or the Bosas or any of those guys, but I think just with more consistent production, he added about 10 to 15 pounds in the offseason. He feels like that will help him a little bit more just grind through a season and be able to match up with some of the heavier, stronger offensive linemen in the NFL that he's going up against. But I do think that the Mike Green pick just intrigues me so much. I mean, we all know why he fell. He fell to the second round for Baltimore. They felt confident enough in their, investigation and all the people they talked to take him. They stopped his slide. I mean, the production is there. The tape is there. The fact that he was a top 15 to 20 player for a lot of people in this draft speaks volumes in terms of what he can do on the field. And the Ravens, they don't really have that Myles Garrett that the Browns do, or the Trey Hendrickson or the TJ Watt. Like every team in their division has one. The Ravens are the one team that doesn't. And I think that for Mike Green, he has the potential. I'm not saying he's going to be, but he has the potential to maybe be that guy for them. And if they can get that on a rookie deal and have Mike Green for 4 years and have him on that deal with how many extensions the Ravens have to get done here. Lamar Jackson has a $70 million cap hit next season. They have to get his extension and to lower that. Kyle Hamilton is up for an extension. Tyler Linderbaum's a free agent. He's up for an extension. Oweh, I talked about, Kyle Van Noy. What's he going to look like? Got guys down the pipeline like Zay Flowers. It's really important for them to get really elite level production from players on rookie contracts. They got that last year with Nate Wiggins and Roger Rosengarten. Hopefully they can get it again this year from Malaki Starks and Mike Green. When you have a quarterback on a big contract and, Lamar is going to beat out Josh Allen's deal, the Bills got that done. So now the Ravens have to, I think, top that number. rookie contracts, and that's why the Ravens, they had 11 draft picks. I don't think 11 draft picks make the roster, but Eric DeCosta, the Ravens GM, is very of the mindset that take as many swings as you can. The more swings you get, the more opportunity you have to hit on a guy. And it has worked well. Their philosophy is strong. But in the pass rushing department, I think that they have the guys. I mean, Tavius Robinson is someone that I think is an exceptional run defender, and he's been talked about exceptionally well by all of his teammates and coaches. The Ravens pass rush group, it's not all these household names, you're not going to like hear of all these guys, but I think that they're solid in a way that the rest of the defensive stars can really work off of it.
So you mentioned Malaki Starks and Mike Green there. What are the early returns? Any camp reports there? Is Mike Green looking like, because of all the pass rushers, he was the fully formed guy. He had power, he had speed, and he had an actual set of moves where a lot of edge rushers come in the NFL and they're just freak athletes, but they don't have the skills. He had the tools and the skills. So I'm wondering if there's any early returns in camp and if they look the part so far in those, especially those first 2 draft picks for the Ravens.
Yeah, not that Mike Green isn't athletic, but you look at Owe and you look at Green, and they're kind of like opposites in terms of the Ravens and in the selections that they were. Mike Green had the production. Obviously, you mentioned it. I mean, NFL ready is the name of the game, and the Ravens are ready to win now. They need that. Mike Green, it's a little iffy sometimes without pads to really understand how guys are performing in the trenches without the physicality that pads bring. But once the pads have come on, I mean, Mike Green every single day, it's day 3 of pads for the Ravens here as we record. Every single day he's been in the headlines. He's had multiple viral clips of him just bullying tight ends with ease, pushing them to the ground. The speed to power is clearly there. I mean, he's someone that I think truly can be a 3-down early impact player, and he's showing that so far. He's had a couple of would-be sacks. John Harbaugh's made it very clear they're not bringing down Lamar Jackson in practice. You're not doing that, but would-be sacks on Lamar. And then Malaki Starks, he had a great day during the Ravens' second training camp practice. He was all over the field, intercepted Lamar Jackson. He's just a smart football player. I mean, Georgia's a program that, like, if you go to Georgia and you stay there, I mean, you're going to be NFL ready. And if you're in that top echelon of guys, like, the Ravens understand that Malaki, he was a Red Star prospect for them. And this is one of the rare cases, actually, where their draft pick leaked before the draft. It was the night before, and that never happens for the Ravens. And so that news report came out. It was all over the national media, and everybody thought they were going to take Nicky Manwari because the Ravens never leak their guys. Like, it usually never happens that information gets out there, but they loved him. He was incredible in interviews, super savvy. Both those guys also understand they're going to have to earn their stripes in the NFL. They're not overly confident. They're saying, hey, you know what? I believe in myself, but I have to make a name for myself at the NFL level, which is a great mindset to have. So, Baltimore does a lot of homework on these guys. They make sure they're the right fits, and, it doesn't work out sometimes like it doesn't for every team, but I'm confident in those 2 guys, especially with what we've seen so far in training camp.
Kevin, last thing I have for you is how they're going to deploy Starks. So I thought the coaching defections on the defensive side of the ball really hurt Baltimore early in the season. There was miscommunication, misusage of personnel. Go call Dean Pease up, and to Harbaugh's credit, make major adjustments, one of which, and there's several, and I'm sure but Hamilton, instead of being the jack of all trades, we're just going to put you in a center fielder type role, a deep role, and everyone else can kind of play their part. So do you think drafting Starks lets Hamilton be Hamilton, or will they just stick to what worked well with Hamilton deep?
I think it'll be a little of both. I think they're going to try to have Hamilton deep a little bit more. I mean, I think that, like you talked about,
good at everything.
Exactly. And it was such a last-ditch effort for them. It was like, if this doesn't work, what is going to work? It's true. I mean, they were out of options completely. They had no other place to turn to unless you wanted to sign some guy and hope it worked out, which it probably wasn't going to. And Hamilton showed, I mean, the efficiency numbers jumped up. From, I believe it was weeks 11 through 18, they were the top-rated defense in multiple different passing categories, not to mention the whole year. They were really solid against the run. So I think for what Malaki does for them, and actually John Harbaugh talked about this today, he was actually out there playing a little bit of corner. He can come down and play some nickel for them if they need him to. He said Harbaugh made it clear he's going to be a safety, but there are a lot of different ways that he said that the Ravens can present him, whether that is in the deep part of the field. You can have Malaki come up and play a little bit there as well. We know that Kyle Hamilton is at his best when he can roam around and play freely, but sometimes that also just means, hey, Kyle, go patrol deep for a possession or go patrol deep for a couple of plays and then come up at the line. The Ravens love using disguised blitzes off the edge, kind of using guys in that role. Brandon Stevens and Arthur Millette were the guys they did a lot of that with. Also, Darius Washington. They've used Kyle Hamilton there before as well. I wouldn't be shocked if Malaki becomes a blitzer for them and they try to experiment with him there as well. So it's such a free-flowing defense. It's truly positionless. And so for Malaki, I expect him to play a lot around the Ravens and what their strengths are, because Malaki has so many strengths himself.
Now, Kevin, I know Matt's at Steelers camp right now, but it's okay because he's already said that he thinks that the Ravens are the best team in the division. And in fact, if I'm not mistaken, Matt, the Ravens were your Super Bowl pick, right?
I'm leaning that way very strongly.
Yeah. So, Kevin, how do you see the AFC North? Aaron Rodgers now in the division. The
tough day, by the way.
Bengals defensive ends do we have a breaking news report from Steelers?
No, that's all.
Okay. You got the Cincinnati Bengals have their defensive ends in camp now.
Yeah,
don't really know what's going on with the Cleveland Browns and their carousel of quarterbacks there. But how do you see this division playing out in 2025?
Yeah, I think it's exactly how you listed. I think it'll be the Ravens #1. I think that it'd have to go catastrophically wrong for them to lose it. And look, I mean, there are scenarios. I mean, health is a big factor here. The Ravens have to stay healthy. They are prone, like every team is, to lose games that they should not lose. I mean, they had that game against Cleveland. Jameis Winston, he beat them. The Raiders in week 2, Gardner Minshew was apparently their kryptonite. So that's a thing that happened last season as well. But I do think that the Ravens, they have the roster, they have the talent, they have the staff. I just think it's all there for them to win the division. Pittsburgh, I mean, I was fine with the moves that they made. I mean, I think that, if Rodgers can be fine, he'll be somewhat of an upgrade over late season Russell Wilson. He just lost it at the end, mistake after mistake. I mean, I think it has to be a little better than that. The thing with the Steelers for me is that I think that they brought in talent, but them trading away talent is where I'm just like, how much of an upgrade is it actually? Because when the DK Metcalf thing happened, I was like, okay, that's a good move for them because you pair him with George Pickens. Last year it was George Pickens and friends, so now you get 2 guys side by side, but then you trade Pickens away. And I mean, I understand the reasoning behind it, but now you're kind of back to where you started, albeit now you do have Jonnu Smith. And I personally like Calvin Austin. I think he's a little underrated. I think he's going to be somebody for them. He already kind of is, but then
could you have pulled this all off, keeping Minka and
exactly. And then the whole Jalen Ramsey thing, like I'd feel a lot better about them if they had George Pickens still, and if they had Minka. Cincinnati, I'm probably one of the people who was more down on Cincinnati. I mean, I think
if you know the division, you don't trust the Bengals.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, like I have a lot of respect for Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins. I mean, I've watched Jamar Chase put up over 200 yards multiple times on this defense, which is just ridiculous in its own right. I mean, he averages, I believe it's the most yards, most touchdowns against the Ravens out of any team. But it's the way that the Ravens beat the Bengals last season. It was multiple times that they won in high-scoring shootouts because the defense of Cincinnati just could not stop anybody, and they didn't really do a ton to upgrade it, in my opinion. Like, I just don't think it's there. Zach Taylor also is like the worst coach of all time in the first 2 weeks of the season. They're like 1-9 in his 5 years or something like that in the first 2 weeks. So I don't trust Cincinnati, despite the fact they have such a high-powered offense. And then, yeah, I mean, we could probably sit here for a day and talk about everything that's going on in Cleveland right now. I don't really see them. And look, this is a team Baltimore lost to last season, so it can always happen. Joe Flacco will be returning to Baltimore for the first time since he got traded to Denver from Baltimore in week 2. So if he's the starter, that'll be a storyline in itself. I know a lot of people wanted that Cleveland-Baltimore matchup in the playoffs a couple of years ago when Joe was there. They'll get the matchup in week 2 if Joe's starting, but I think Cleveland is pretty clear the last place team for me.
It's going to be a fun ride, and really, I think probably a lot of Ravens fans, and hopefully not the Ravens themselves, or maybe even looking past the division, and that hump that they have to get over is wearing red uniform, right? And in the AFC, and I think that's where we're at with the Baltimore Ravens right now. It's going to be a fun season. Kevin, appreciate you jumping on with us. Follow Kevin at KAusStriker34 on Twitter, the host of Locked On Ravens Daily, and Matt and I will be back tomorrow. Right here, mailbag time. Get your questions in on Twitter and on the YouTube comments. Subscribe while you're there. Right here, Peacock and Williamson.